Good. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. So today, inshallah ta'ala, we sit and discuss the topic that I mentioned yesterday. And that topic is the virtue of the congregational prayer. The virtue of the congregational prayer. And as I mentioned yesterday, this topic is important for those who are local. This topic is important for those who are local. It's important as a benefit for everybody, but my address right now is for the people who are local, so they can understand the importance and the benefits of prayer in the congregation. Salatul Jama'ah. Right. Sheikh Abdullah Bassam, rahimahullah ta'ala, mentions Sumiyat Jama'ah لاجتماع المسلمين في فعلها زمنا ومكانا. So Sheikh Abdullah Bassam, he mentions that it's called Jama'ah, Arabic benefit, لاجتماع المصلين, because the people, they come together, right? And as if we wanted to translate it, maybe we could say it's called the congregational prayer, due to the fact that the people do what? Congregate. Similar concept. It's called the congregational prayer due to the fact that the people congregate. Right, zamanan wa makanan. But pay attention to that. That's important. Right, that the people, they congregate, right, at the same time, in the same place. Right, stay with me. Right, at the same time, in the same place. That's important. Right, pay attention. It's very important that they congregate together at the same time in the same place. فَإِذَا خَلَّوْا بِهِمَا أَوْ بِإِحْدَاهُمَا لَمْ تُسَمِّ جَمَاعَةً. So if one of those conditions is missing, then you don't call it congregational prayer. Pay attention, that's important, right? If one of those conditions is missing, it's not called the what? Congregational prayer. So in order for something to be called the congregational prayer, the people have to come together when? Same time and same what? Place. Pay attention to that. Same time and same place in order for it to be actually called congregational prayer. وَمِنْ هَذَا يُعْلَمْ أَنَّ الصَّلَاةِ خلف الإمام بواسطة المذياع أو تلفاز لا تصح. That the prayer behind, we know from here, or if we understand that, then we know that the prayer behind the imam by way of the radio or a screen, right, is not correct. What's meant by screen right here is not so much the screen in the masjid, but a television, right? A television. So from here, if we understand these two conditions, then we know that prayer by way of the radio or behind someone on the radio or behind someone on TV is not correct. لأنها ليست صلاة مع جماعة, because it's not a prayer with the congregation. And if you notice, what's missing? It said it had to be two conditions. What's the two conditions? Same time and the same what? Place, right? So if someone is following someone on the radio, it's the same time, but it's not the same what? Not the same place. But people do that. That's a question that comes a lot. Can I pray behind, especially in times of pandemic, and especially with Tarawih, but likewise with the pandemic? Where's that? And this is a point that our brother, our teacher Hassan Sumali, he made a good point one day, that the pandemic, it really made people ponder the state of their of learning, their state as it relates to learning the Quran. Because at one point there was no what? Tarawih. Right? At one point there was no Tarawih. Right? So a person, he has a family, right? Pay attention. A person has a family, right? And it's time to pray Tarawih, and they can't what? Can't pray Tarawih because he doesn't know how to recite Fatiha, or he doesn't, whatever the case may be, he's deficient in reciting the Quran. Right? He's deficient. So point being, why am I saying that? Because that issue came up. Can I pray behind the what? The radio. Or can I pray behind the TV? Right? So that issue comes up, and we know from reading this that's not correct, because at the end of the day it's the same time, but it's not the same what? Same place. So you don't call it congregational prayer, and it's not correct. Right? Likewise, the opposite. Right? It might be the same place. For example, we just prayed, and someone comes and prays, right, by themselves. The same place, but it wasn't the right what? Time. the same place, but it wasn't the right time. So those two conditions, they need to be present. They need to be present. Now, as it relates to the congregational prayer, then what we want to discuss, right? And again, my address is to those who are here, right? Those who are here, meaning in the city of Hartford, meaning that attend the Masjid, right? Is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if we ponder, right? If we ponder Islamic legislation, then we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has legislated for the Muslims to congregate. Right? We ponder some of the rulings and we think about the Quran and we think about the Sunnah. We come across situations where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has legislated for the Muslims to do what? To congregate. Right? Give me some examples. Give me some examples where it's legislated for us to congregate. Jum'ah. What else? It's another legislated example. 5 daily prayers. Right? What else? Eid, right? Allahu Akbar, right? And that's exactly what's about to be mentioned, right? So if we ponder, right, Allah has legislated for us to gather. We find that in the legislation of Islam, right? So we have a daily gathering, right? Just want to break it down in a timely fashion, right? We have a daily gathering, which is the what? 5 daily prayers, right? We have the daily gathering, which is the what? The 5 daily prayers, right? And those 5 daily prayers, right? Sheikh Abdullah Bassam, he mentions the 5 daily prayers wherein those in close proximity gather together, meaning those in the same area, those in the same neighborhood, block over, 2 blocks over, especially in a Muslim country. In the Muslim country, the daily prayers is where you see what? You see all your neighbors, right? All day long, you see all of your neighbors in the Muslim countries for the daily prayers, right? And what does that do? That causes everyone to become what? Acquainted with one another, right? That causes everyone to, what am I saying? What I'm saying is the congregational prayer is how we get to know one another. That's how we get to know one another, because when you come to the masjid, and that's important for a community, right? What we've been talking about over the past, few days is trying to learn and implement things that are going to help strengthen the community. The congregation, we have to be serious about the congregational prayer, right? A brother may not come to class or a brother may not come to this, but we say, bro, we need to see you where? At the prayer. You come and pray. I know you might not be able to make it to class, whatever the case may be. You might be able to make it to this function, right? You should. We want you to make it to the class we want. But for the prayer, make sure that you make it to the what? The prayer. Come to the prayer. Come pray so everybody can see each other daily, right? And people get to become acquainted with one another. And you notice that, right? You notice that in communities. You notice communities, the brothers that pray together, right? You find that they have a good bond. Right, the 5 daily prayers wherein those in close proximity gather, right, to build bonds and to become acquainted with one another. Right, then we have a weekly gathering. Weekly gathering is what? Jum'ah, and it's a little what? Bigger. Right, the 5 daily prayers is a gathering, right, but it may not be as big as what? Jum'ah. That's because the outreach is more. So now it's not, and remember, this is talking about a Muslim country, right? It's talking about a Muslim country, but sometimes it happens here as well. Whereas though the people that come for Jum'ah, because sometimes in the Muslim country, the way it's set up, every masjid doesn't have Jum'ah, right? Just so you understand the concept. Every masjid doesn't have Jum'ah. So you might have small masajid in the neighborhood, and those masajid are just for the daily prayers. But then there's a bigger masjid that might be a little bit, it's a bigger masjid where everybody comes to do what? Pray Jum'ah. That's called a Jameel, where the people they come and pray Jum'ah. So you have the weekly gathering, which is for Jum'ah, and the outreach is more. So it's not just the neighborhood people, but it's people also outside of the neighborhood. So we have a weekly gathering, which is a Jum'ah prayer, right? And it's the same benefit of coming to know one another and getting acquainted with one another, but the attendees may be farther or from further places of the city. Then we have a yearly gathering. What's the yearly gathering? With the Eid, right? How many times? Twice, right? We have the Eid al-Adha, Eid al-Fitr, Eid al-Adha, Eid al-Fitr. So we have 2 yearly gatherings, right? And the benefits are the same as well. Then we have another gathering. What's another gathering that we have? Hajj, right? Another gathering. Allahu Akbar. Right? We notice how they get bigger. The daily, right? Weekly, right? Yearly, right? Then you had a gathering of Hajj, right? Where all of the Muslims are there, right? You have the gathering of Hajj where all of the Muslims are there. So if we ponder this legislation, we see, right? We see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has legislated for the Muslims to gather. Now, some of the benefits of Hajj are to benefit, right? To benefit and advise one another, right? Where does that happen a lot, right? To get advice when you talk about Hajj and Umrah. People come and make Hajj and Umrah and go visit who? The scholars of Islam, right? They come to visit, go make Hajj, go make Umrah, right? And they come to get advice from the scholars of Islam, right? And that is no doubt that's from the benefits of Hajj and Umrah. Right? So if you make Hajj and Umrah, one of the things that you want to do is you want to try to sit with the what? Sit with the scholars. Right, me and Brother Muhammad, we were just talking about that. That's priceless. Right, it's priceless. If a person thinks that that's something that, something that's trivial or not important, sitting with the scholars of Islam is priceless. The mannerisms that you learn, and the way to conduct yourself, and how a person carries their knowledge. It's something that's priceless. It's something that's priceless. And people are listening online, and studying a book by yourself is not the same as studying it with a what? With a scholar. Right? Studying a book by yourself is not the same as studying a book with a scholar. Right? So someone who is self-taught, they should never be deluded. Right? If anyone is listening, right, being self-taught, you could become deluded and delusional. In reality, believing that you know more than you actually do, right? And there's an example. It's an example that makes perfect sense, right? If you went into a doctor's office and you looked around, normally when you go into a doctor's office and you look around, what do you see hanging up? Certificates and what else? Degrees, right? In the doctor's office, you see it hanging around, right? So imagine you go in the doctor's office, right? And you look around, there's nothing there. And you talk to the doctor, you say, "Hey, well, where did you study?" So, where did you study? He said, I just read everything in the house. I just read everything in the house, and I'm self-taught. Would you let them work on you? Would you let them do anything to you? You wouldn't let them do anything to you because you say, you're self-taught. You never sat and learned from anyone. You weren't an apprentice. You didn't do anything. You just sat and read the books by your what? By yourself. Right? That's not a concept. That's not a concept that people accept normally. Right, so similarly in Islam, it's not the same being self-taught, just sitting around reading books and believing that you're achieving some type of level. One of the things that's dangerous about reading books we all can figure it out. What's one of the most dangerous things about reading books by yourself? A misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. That's one of the greatest benefits of having a teacher. Just being in a university, right? Just the university setting, right? You study something. You take the test or whatever the case may be, and you might be sitting thinking in the back of your head, man, I aced this test or whatever the case may be. You give the test to the teacher, gives it back, especially if it's an open-ended question, right? And you give the test, and you get the test back, and you look at it, and you say, no, this was wrong. That was a grammatical mistake. That's not that wasn't the wording of the hadith. And you go back, and you're able to check your understanding about the things that you got wrong. You need that as a student. You need that learning. Not that you're always reading, and likewise, that's why I said it could cause a person to be delusional. Because every time you read, you get up believing what? If you're reading by yourself, that you got it 100%, and it could cause you to become delusional. Like you, everything you read is right, and everything you say is right. You never make a mistake. That can really be a problem. And that's another issue. That's another benefit of sitting with the scholars is you learn to sit down. Right? You learn to sit down. Right? We live in an age where everybody wants to stand up. Everybody wants to stand up. Everybody wants to be seen. One of the benefits of sitting with the scholars is that you get to sit down. You get to sit down and listen and to be humble and to say, you know what, maybe I wasn't correct. Man, that was a misunderstanding. You get a chance to be humble. Sitting at someone's feet. Point being, what I'm trying to say, as again, this is community-based advice, right? Be from those who benefit from the scholars and sit with the scholars, right? And send the youth to study with the scholars, right? Be from that type of community. Some of the benefits of the congregational prayer. Some of the benefits of the congregational prayer is that we mentioned some of them. Is that the bonds and ties and acquaintances are achieved, right? Bonds and ties and acquaintances are achieved, right? One of the benefits of the congregational prayer is that a Muslim can learn to pray, right? That a Muslim can learn to what? Pray. Why am I saying that? A person may say, well, I'll just read a book and learn how to what? Pray. But some people don't learn by just reading, right? Many people learn by actually what? Doing it, right? So if a person is a new Muslim, right? And it doesn't just apply to new Muslims, right? If a person person's been a Muslim for a while, but they may not know how to pray properly, right? And everyone knows that everyone knows themselves. They know what they know how to do, and they know what they don't know how to do. But the congregational prayer can help a person learn how to pray, because now you know what to do. You learn when to stand. You learn when to bow. You learn when to go into prostration, right? You can ask somebody, say, hey, what do I say when I go? Is the perfect learning environment to learn how to pray, right? That's from the benefits of the congregational prayer. Not that you just have to sit alone and read a book and try to figure out, it's just on the page, but you're not really actually doing it with others. Right. Number 3 is from racing to do good deeds. Right. From the benefits of the congregational prayers, from is racing to do good deeds. That you race to the congregational prayer and join the congregational prayer. This is a beautiful benefit, right? This is a heart softener. This is a beautiful benefit, and this is really a heart softener. The congregational prayer is a place where the strong are able to mix with the weak. Right? The strong are able to mix with the weak, right? And that's good for society. That's good for society, because some people are powerful in status, and some people are of low status. No, I don't mean it like that, but some people have a higher rank than others. So if they're Muslim, it doesn't matter who you are and who you may not be. That does not matter, right? At the end of the day, both people have to come to the Masjid and they get a chance to do what? Mix with one another. They get a chance to mix with one another. Likewise, is a place where the rich mix with the what? Poor. Because normally in society, the rich don't mix with the poor. Normally, the rich are in one place, right, a certain type of area, and the poor are in what? Another area, right? So with the congregational prayer, from the benefits of the congregational prayers, likewise, the rich mix with the what? Poor. And that's the benefit of Islam. It keeps everybody humble, right? It keeps everybody humble, even at death, right? Ponder death, right? Anybody get any special treatment? Everybody's going in the white what? Sheets. Doesn't matter who you were. Doesn't matter how much money you had. Doesn't matter who you are. Everybody's getting buried the same. Right? You go on Hajj, right? Are there rich people on Hajj and poor people on Hajj? Same. But at the end of the day, they're all there. So Islam, if a person ponders, right, those rulings, no doubt they bring about an effect on the heart, and they soften the heart. The hadith that we want to discuss today, right? The hadith that we want to discuss today is the hadith an Abdullah ibn Umar. Hadith an Abdullah ibn Umar. Hadith an Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu anhuma. أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال صلاة الجماعة أفضل من صلاة الفذ ب27 درجة. متفق عليه. ولهما عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه, and likewise on Abu Hurairah, narrated by Abu Hurairah, ب25 جزءا. I had a hadith of Abdullah ibn Umar رضي الله عنه, that the prayer in congregation is better than prayer alone by 27 degrees. Right? Prayer in congregation is better than prayer alone by 27 degrees. And the book that we study on Fridays at Masjid Ibn Baz is actually called An Adequate Treasure for the Seeker of the Hereafter. An Adequate Treasure for the Seeker of the Hereafter. Right, and it's by Al-Mundhari. The book is by Al-Mundhari. Kifayat al-Muta'abbid wa Tuhfat al-Mutazahid. Right, An Adequate Treasure for the Seeker of the Hereafter, Lil-Mundhari, by Al-Mundhari. Kifayat al-Muta'abbid wa Tuhfat al-Mutazahid. Now it's called An Adequate Treasure for the Seeker of the Hereafter. What is the purpose of that book, or what is the goal behind that book? The goal behind that book is that he mentioned hadith. He mentioned a hadith that mentioned rewards. All right, he mentioned hadith that mentioned rewards. He mentioned hadith that mentioned rewards, similar to this hadith. Prayer in congregation is worth 27 times more than prayer what? Alone. Arabic or English? English. An Adequate Treasure for the Seeker of the Hereafter. An Adequate Treasure for the Seeker of the Hereafter. an adequate treasure for the seeker of the hereafter. So it mentions hadith similar to this, right? That's what's making me mention it. It mentions hadith similar to this. It mentions hadith that highlight the rewards for action. What's the importance of a book like that? The importance of a book like that is because the importance of a book like that is because when you hear the reward for something, what does that make you want to do? Makes you want to do it. It makes you want to do it. If I come to the congregational prayers where it's 27 degrees better, let me go to the what? Congregational prayer, right? Or for example, the 5 daily prayers, right? In Jum'ah to Jum'ah are expiation of the sins that occur, right, in between them. Right? So if you know from prayer to prayer, as it relates to the 5 daily prayers, that they're wiping away, right, or expiating the sins, what does that make you want to do? It makes you want to pray the 5 daily prayers. If you know that Jum'ah to Jum'ah, right, is going to wipe out the sins that occurred in between them, we're talking about the minor sins, that makes you want to do what? Go to Jum'ah. And then another wording from Ramadan to Ramadan makes you want to fast Ramadan. And if we ponder this, we see that time frame. We have a daily expiation, just like we have a daily gathering. We have a weekly expiation, just like we have a weekly gathering, and we have a yearly expiation, just like we have a yearly gathering. So the opportunities are there, right? The opportunities for reward, the opportunity for forgiveness, all of the opportunities are there. All of the opportunities are there, but the issue is, are we going to seize the opportunity, right? That's the issue. The opportunity is always there. The problem lies if you don't do what? You don't seize it and you don't act, right? Point being, right? And in another wording for Abu Hurairah that is mentioned, 25 is worth 25 times more. Worth 25 times more. If we ponder this hadith, we see a number of benefits, right? If we ponder this hadith, then we see a number of benefits, right? The first benefit is that this hadith shows the virtue of congregational prayer. This hadith shows the virtue of congregational prayer over prayer alone by 27 times. This hadith that shows the virtue of congregational prayer. Shows the hadith that shows the virtue of congregational prayer over prayer alone. And again, just want to emphasize, make sure you pray in a congregational prayer, right? Again, it may sound like just normal advice, but if you want the community to grow, right? If you want to, that has to be established. That has to be established. Right. When you look at some of the more well-established community, the congregational prayer is there are people there. Right, there are people at the congregational prayer, and then many times the congregational prayer is the core of the community. Understand what I'm saying? If you want to get a gauge, right, on how the community's doing, right, and numbers don't matter. Don't misunderstand me, right? I'm not saying that numbers matter, right? I'm talking about gathering upon the what? The truth. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about doing anything just to have a bunch of people in the Masjid. That's not what I mean. Right? We're talking about solid Sunni, Salafi Muslim. That's what we're talking about, right? And so when we look at the congregational prayer, then you see that's normally the core of the community, if you understand what I'm saying. Right? When you look at the congregational prayer, then that's normally the what? The core of the community. Right, so if you're looking at 40, 50, 60, 70 brothers at the congregational prayer, you're probably talking about 50, 60, 70 members of the community. Right, that's not to say that other people don't swing past and pay the congregational prayer, but the congregational prayer is normally where you see the core. So when you see those lines growing, then it's an indication that your core is growing. And again, that speech needs some explanation because we don't want to make it seem like it's about numbers and that's not the point. I hope everybody understands what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say that you want your congregational prayer to be strong, and you want the community to grow, wherein the community is diligent about the congregational prayer. Right, be diligent about that, because a lot of times what happens is you see it with Masjid that don't focus on knowledge based. They don't focus on seeking knowledge. They don't focus on acts of worship. They focus on events. Right, we're going to have a banquet. Right, we're going to have, and it's okay to have those things. We have a banquet. Going to have this social services, whatever, and this social services, whatever, and all those things are good. But when the social services event is over, now what? When the banquet is over, now what? Right? And whatever event is over, now what? Now still remains the 5 what? Daily prayers. Where's everybody at? Everybody that came for the event, where are they at now? So we want to focus on the congregational prayer. Benefit number 2. No one chooses one reward. Real quick, what's meant by 27 times better? Just so we understand the hadith. What's meant by that? Barakah. Allahu Akbar. That's a good one. Huh? Hasana. Mumtaz. What else we got? What else we got? Anything else? What else we got? Allahu Akbar. It's as if you prayed 27 times alone. 27 times, pray one time is as if you prayed 27 times alone, right? So what's meant by praying, what's meant is the praying in congregational prayer is the reward of 27 times by praying alone. Were you to pray 27 times alone by yourself, that's one what? Prayer in congregation. That's one prayer in congregation. Right? No one chooses, right? Benefit number 2. No one chooses one reward over much reward except one of 2 people. Right? Because someone may make that choice. They're just going to say, I'm going to pray what? I'm going to pray at home. Right? So now that person has made a choice for what? One reward over 27, 25 or 27. Right? That person has made a choice, right, to take one reward over many. Right? So only one of 2 people make that decision. Only one of 2 people make that type of decision. Right? Sheikh Abdullah Bassam, he mentioned someone who doesn't believe wholeheartedly in these texts. Right? Someone who doesn't believe wholeheartedly in these texts. Because if a person believed wholeheartedly in the text, and they would say, I'm going to get a reward of what? 27 times more. So maybe the person doesn't believe wholeheartedly in the text. Or an unintelligent person who doesn't understand prosperous actions. Right? Or an unintelligent person who does not understand prosperous actions. Benefit number 3. Benefit number 3. Doesn't understand prosperous actions, meaning doesn't understand that 27 is more than 1. They just don't get it. They don't understand prosperous actions. Benefit number 3. Benefit number 3 is what's meant by prayer alone is the one who prays alone in the house without an excuse. Right? What's meant by prayer alone is the one who prays in the house without an excuse. It doesn't have to be in the house, but just prays alone. But right here is mentioned in the house without an excuse. As for the one with an excuse, then the reward is earned. Right? As for the one with an excuse, then the reward is earned. Person always prays in the congregational prayer. Always. Right? They never miss the congregational prayer. But they become sick. Right? They're ill. Right? And they can't make it to the masjid. So they pray inside of the house alone because they're what? Sick. What's the reward for them? 1 or 27? 27. Right? What's meant is the person who prays in the house alone without an excuse. Without an excuse. As for the one who has an excuse, then the reward is earned. Praying in congregation is not a benefit number 4. Praying in congregation is not a condition for the validity of the prayer. Right? Praying in congregation is not a condition for the validity of prayer. Prayer alone is valid. Right? Prayer alone is valid with sin. Prayer alone is valid with sin. If there's no valid excuse for missing the congregation. So the prayer itself is valid. What does it? When you say the prayer is valid, what's meant by that? It's acceptable, but valid, more technically speaking, meaning they don't have to repeat it. Right? Valid meaning that they don't have to repeat it. The prayer was what? The prayer was valid. Invalid means that you have to go back and do what? Repeat it. You have to go back and repeat it. All right, so prayer in congregation is not a condition for the validity of the prayer. How do we know that the prayer is correct? From the hadith. How do we know that the prayer is correct? They're doing a good deed. Nah, something else, but from the wording of the hadith. Rahman. From the wording of the hadith. Think about the hadith that we mentioned. How do we know that the prayer alone is valid from the wording of the hadith? I read it again, right? عن عبد الله بن عمر رضي الله عنهما أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال صلاة الجماعة أفضل من صلاة الفذ ب27 درجة. Prayer in congregation is 27 times better than prayer alone. Right? Prayer in congregation is 27 times better than prayer alone. How do we know that the prayer alone is valid from the hadith? Because he mentioned alone. That's a good look, but something else. That's a good look, but something else.
He didn't say, he said afdal, but not like acceptable.
He got you again. Right? Because the Prophet ﷺ said, because he said that the prayer is better. So that means that the one alone is what? It's good. Right? If it was absolute, if it wasn't invalid, then it wouldn't even be what? Good. Right? So he said it's better. Afdal. Meaning that is what? Is better. So that goes to show that is what? Is at the very least is what? Valid. The very least is valid. The very least is valid. Yeah. Alright, so that's benefit number 4. Benefit, I think. I got number 4. Number 3 was meant by the one who prays alone. All right, what you got for 4, Sheikh?
Praise alone is valid with sin. It doesn't have to be repeated.
Yeah, I got that for 4. That's 4, right? Yeah. Yes, 4. Yeah, we good. We on the right track. That's 4. All right, that's because you missed the congregation. It's valid, but the prayer itself is valid, but you missed the congregation.
Except for the one who usually prays in them at the congregation, but he's sick and he prays home.
As far as the amount of reward, Allahu A'lam, the amount of reward. But that's why I'm not saying reward. I'm saying is what? Valid. We're not talking about reward. Allah knows best what the reward is. With sin. The sin for what? Not the sin for praying. The sin for what? Missing congregation. Not sinful for praying. You're sinful for what? Missing the congregation. You can't get him back, Muhammad. He got you. Now, number 5. Now, number 5. Actions can be more rewardable depending on how they are carried out. Right? Actions can be more rewardable depending on how they're carried out. Let me mention something though. Let's just to make that issue clear. Hold on, let me see if I can find that speech from Ibn Qudamah. Hold on. I had some speech from Ibn Qudamah. One second, ikhwa. 1 second. Now, write this down. قد قال الموفق Ibn Qudamah. We know Ibn Qudamah, right? We know Ibn Qudamah. You know Ibn Qudamah, the famous Hanbali scholar, Ibn Qudamah. He says, لا نعلم أحد أوجب الإعادة على من صلى وحده. Right? Ibn Qudamah, he said, لا نعلم أحدا أوجب الإعادة على من صلى وحده. Ibn Qudamah said, we don't know anyone that makes the person that prays alone, we don't know anyone to make him do what? Pray again. Right? So Ibn Qudamah said, we don't know anyone. Right? We don't know anyone that says the prayer of the person alone is invalid and they need to do what? Do it again. So just a benefit from the wording, when he says we don't know anyone, what is he alluding to? No, not just no authentic evidence. He's alluding to something else. No, he's alluding to something else. Huh? Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. No, he's alluding to something else. What's he alluding to? That is no evidence. That is consensus.
He encouraged.
That is consensus. Right? And we know that we follow what? The Quran, the what? Sunnah, and what else? Al-Ijma'. So when he's saying there's no one that differs, he's saying it's basically what? Consensus. That's a lesser way of saying consensus. Because if you say consensus, then that means that you're what? You're sure you know that no one... But he's saying, I don't know anybody to what? Differ. That's a lighter way of saying that nobody what? Differs. Without actually saying it. Because when you claim ijma', that's a heavy claim. That's saying that all of the scholars what? Agree. So sometimes you find the scholars saying, I don't know anyone... And there's a benefit in that, right? What's the benefit in that? Let's see if we can figure the benefit out in that. What's the benefit in that? Close. That's good. Close. What's the benefit from that? Sometimes when you're having a discussion Islamically, don't make super affirmative statements. Not so much that it's a fatwa, but don't make super affirmative statements. Because you even hear the scholar, and that's a benefit of sitting with the scholars. They say, from what I know. Right? Sometimes you might be talking about an issue, then finish your statement with what? From what I know. Because sometimes we talk about an issue and we say the issue as if that's what? It. It's absolute, as if you've read everything on the issue. So we notice from Ibn Qudama right here, Ibn Qudama, he says we don't know anyone to differ about the fact that is valid. Now, benefit number what? What benefit we on, Sheikh?
6.
We just did 5? All right. Number 5 was actions can be more rewardable depending on how they are carried out, right? How they are carried out. So salat in congregation is more rewardable. Now, benefit number 6. Benefit number 6. This hadith is talking about difference, and this is a nice benefit too, nice subtle benefit, right? This hadith is talking about difference and reward for praying in congregation alone, right? This hadith is talking about difference and reward for praying in congregation alone. There are other differences in reward as well, such as what? What else can cause a person's salat to fluctuate as it relates to reward? Right here we're talking about what? Congregation, right? The reward praying alone and the reward in congregation, right? What are other things that can affect the reward of a salat? Allahu Akbar. Khushu', right? That's one. A person's khushu'. A person who's attentive, a person who has khushu' and humility in the salat. As for a person whose mind is drifting, right? Or no doubt that their salat's different in, right? And reward. Homework is the hadith, right? Homework, find a hadith for that. Now, what else? Perfection of the prayer, right? Number 3, that's number 3. Excellence in performance. But we'll make it number 2, right? Excellence in performance. No. Excellence in performance, right? How many sunnahs a person does, right? No. How many aspects of the sunnah a person performs, and so on and so forth, right? And likewise, attentiveness. So you have khushu' can affect the reward. Attentiveness can affect the reward, and the actual performance of the salat, meaning the adherence to the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Now, inshallah ta'ala, we'll stop there. Quick message for you guys. I spoke to Brother Musa. Richardson before I started class, and he wanted me to give you guys the salams. He said, give the brothers the salams, inshallah ta'ala. So Brother Musa gives you the salams, and inshallah ta'ala, we'll pick back up soon, inshallah ta'ala. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.